The church was full. White orchids lined every pew. Soft piano filtered through the air. 300 guests sat in pressed silk and polished shoes, whispering in Korean and Yoruba, the kind of crowd that only gathered for people who mattered. Joon stood at the altar, perfectly tailored black suit, shoulders squared, face unreadable, the same expression that had graced the cover of Forbes Asia 3 years running. The guests watched him the way people always watched Joon, like he was architecture, like he was inevitable. Then the doors opened. Amara walked in. She was breathtaking in ivory. No train, no excess, just clean, elegant fabric and the kind of quiet confidence that filled a room without demanding it. Her bouquet was tight against her chest. Her eyes were fixed on Joon. Her smile was everything. The piano swelled. She reached the altar. The pastor's voice settled over the room. Joon, please repeat your vows. Joon turned to face her, and the smile didn't come. He looked at her the way a man looks at a stranger on the street. Polite, blank, searching. Seconds passed. 1, 2, 5. David, standing just off the altar, felt his stomach drop. He took one step forward, then stopped himself. Miho, seated in the front row, gripped the armrest of his chair. The whispers started slowly, then spread like a current through every row. Amara's smile didn't shatter. It just quietly came apart. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet. Her eyes didn't leave his face. Joon leaned forward slightly and said, barely above a breath, "Who are you?" The room went ice cold. 3 years earlier, Joon could remember the name of every executive in a company worth $9 billion. He could recall quarterly projections from 2019 without looking at a single document. But there was one thing he couldn't hold on to for long: the people he loved. 3 years earlier, the headline read, "The Ice King of Seoul acquires another company. 4th deal this quarter." It wasn't wrong. Joon didn't shake hands across the table. He owned the table, the building it sat in, and usually the street outside. At 35, he ran a multinational shipping and tech empire that moved cargo across 4 continents and employed close to 40,000 people. His competitors didn't call him ruthless behind closed doors. They called him precise, which, in their language, meant the same thing, but with more fear underneath it. He never raised his voice. Never had to. He walked into boardrooms and people adjusted. He spoke and rooms shifted. He had built something that most people dreamed about and most billionaires took decades to construct. And he had done it while carrying a secret that could reduce all of it to nothing. Every morning, before the suit, before the car, before David arrived at 6:45 a.m. with a prepared schedule, Joon opened a notebook. Black leather, worn at the corners. His name written inside the front cover in his own handwriting. Because there were mornings when even that felt distant. Inside were names. Photos taped to pages. Small annotations. This is David. Security. Loyal. 11 years. A photo of an older woman. Yama. She likes chrysanthemums. Call her Sundays. Dates. Reminders. A map of people. He read it every morning the way most men check their phones. The accident had happened 6 years ago. A car crash on a rain-slicked highway outside Incheon. He didn't remember the crash itself, which the doctor said was common. What wasn't common was what came after. The brain injury had healed. Mostly. His cognition remained sharp. Numbers, systems, language, logic, all intact. But personal memory, emotional memory, deteriorated unpredictably. Not in a straight line. Just enough to keep him off balance. Enough to make him dangerous to love. He had stopped trying 3 years into his recovery. Only David knew. And Miho. That was all. Joon had spent 6 years hiding something that could destroy everything he had built. If you're already hooked, subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Miho called on a Tuesday. There's a bakery near Hanamdong. Nigerian Korean owner. The almond croissants will change your entire philosophy on suffering. Joon was reviewing a contract. I don't eat croissants. You don't eat anything that brings you joy. That's exactly why you need this. He went. Not because Miho convinced him, but because David had canceled his afternoon slot and Joon hated unstructured time more than anything. The bakery was small, warm light. The smell of butter and something spiced, cardamom, maybe, hit him before he even opened the door. A chalkboard menu in Korean and English. Neat shelves of bread and brown paper bags. Jazz playing low from somewhere behind the counter. And behind the counter, her. She was talking to an elderly Korean woman, switching languages mid-sentence without pausing, laughing at something the woman said. She moved like she'd been in this space forever, like every corner of it had been built around her energy. She looked up. "Order at the counter," she said, and went back to the woman. No recognition. No performance. Just practicality. He ordered a black coffee and a plain loaf. She reached down, handed him a bag with a smile, took his card. He took the bag. He sat. When he opened it, the loaf inside was sesame with rosemary. Not what he ordered. He returned to the counter. "This isn't mine." She looked at the bag, looked at the receipt. "Oh, that was Mr. Kim's order." 1 second. She retrieved the correct bag, handed it back. Their eyes met for a moment, just a beat, the way two people sometimes do when the air between them is different from what it was a moment before. He nodded, turned. At the door he paused, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small notepad, and wrote something. Outside, in the back of his car, David watched him in the rearview mirror. Joon was reading a slip of paper he'd found in the bottom of the bakery bag. "You're carrying something heavy. Whatever it is, I hope you don't carry it alone." Joon read it twice, folded it, put it in his inside jacket pocket, where he kept the notebook. He looked out the window. David didn't say anything. No one had noticed the cracks before. He went back on Thursday. He told himself it was the coffee. She was behind the counter again, this time alone. She looked up and recognized him, or rather, recognized that he'd been here before, and said, "Black coffee, plain loaf." "Yes." She reached for the bag. He watched her wrap the loaf with the kind of care that looked unconscious, like it was just how she did things. "The note," he said, "in the bag last time." She glanced up. No embarrassment. "I put notes in random order sometimes. Old habit. What made you write that one?" She studied him for a moment. Not invasively, just looking. "You came in, ordered the simplest thing on the menu, sat alone, didn't look at your phone, and left without finishing your coffee." She tilted her head. "That's either someone with complete peace or someone carrying a lot." She handed him the bag. "I figure it wasn't peace." He didn't answer, but he came back on Saturday. The pattern formed without either of them designing it. Twice a week became 3 times. He always ordered the same thing. She always had it ready. The conversations were short at first, weather, the neighborhood, a renovation happening on the block. But Amara noticed things. He always wrote things down. Not just once, constantly. A small notepad appeared whenever he set something on the counter. He'd ask her what time she closed and write it down. He'd ask a question she had answered before. He checked his phone with a regularity that wasn't casual scrolling. It was checking, verifying, anchoring. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. There was an afternoon he came in late, after a board meeting he'd mentioned weeks before, and sat in the corner with his coffee for 40 minutes without speaking. When she brought him a small piece of honey cake she hadn't charged for, he looked at it, then at her, and said, "I'm sorry. I don't think I've introduced myself. I'm Joon." She had known his name for 3 weeks. "Amara," she said simply. She went back behind the counter. He ate the cake. The rainy evening arrived in October. The bakery was quiet. Just one other customer near the window, an older man reading a newspaper. Rain came down hard against the glass. The city outside blurred into amber and gray. Amara was restocking the display case when she glanced up and saw Joon at his usual corner table, notebook open in front of him. Not his notepad. The other one. The black leather one he never left on the table. He was reading it with the concentration of a man studying scripture. His finger moved slowly down a page. He paused, turned back 2 pages, paused again. She watched him for a moment. Then she sat across from him. He looked up, startled. She didn't soften her expression into sympathy. She just looked at him evenly, the way she looked at everything. "What are you afraid of forgetting?" The silence between them was long enough to feel physical. His jaw tightened. He looked down at the notebook. His hands were very still. Then he looked up. "You." The rain got heavier. He told her. Not all at once. The words came out in the uneven way that things do when they've been locked away too long. The accident. The hospital. The doctors who said mostly recovered like that should have been enough. The slow, terrifying realization in the months that followed that numbers stayed but faces slipped. That he could walk into a room and execute a negotiation with perfect precision and walk out 30 minutes later and be unsure who he had just spoken to. He told her about the notebook, about the morning ritual, about the year he had tried dating a woman he cared about, and watch her become a stranger inside 6 months until he ended it before she realized what was happening. He told her he had not told anyone in 6 years. Amara listened. She didn't touch him, didn't make a sound. When he finished, she looked at the notebook on the table, and then back at him. Does the disorder affect how you work? No. Systems, numbers, processes, those are intact. Just people. Just people. She was quiet for a moment. Then we build a system. He frowned slightly. For people, she said. For me. For everything that matters. We build something that holds it so you're not carrying it alone in a notebook. Drop a comment right now if this story already has you feeling something. We're only halfway there. What followed over the next several months was unlike anything Joon had ever experienced. Not because it was romantic at first, but because it was deliberate. Amara approached it the way she approached bread. With patience. With method. With the understanding that some things needed time to become what they were supposed to be. They started recording voice notes. After every meaningful conversation, she'd send him a short audio file. Today you told me your mother used to make japchae on Sundays. You said it smelled like the safest place you'd ever been. He saved everyone. She baked specific things tied to specific memories. A particular spice loaf, the first time he came in, she wrote the recipe out by hand and gave it to him. If you smell this, you'll remember where we started. She took photographs. Not staged ones. Just real. Him at the counter, reading. Her hands covered in flour. The rain-streaked window, on the evening, he told her the truth. She printed them and gave them to him in small envelopes. She taught him that memory didn't only live in the mind. It lived in the body, in smell, in taste, in the weight of a piece of paper in your hand. For the first time since the accident, Joon stopped fighting the disorder. He stopped trying to hide it from himself. He started building around it instead. And the person helping him build was becoming the most important thing in the structure. He stopped pretending not to know her name. He stopped pretending he wasn't counting the days between visits. And on a Saturday morning, standing outside her bakery with 2 coffees in his hand, he told her that without any preface or performance. She took her coffee, said, "I know," smiled, and unlocked the door. The engagement was quiet. No press. No announcement. Just Miho crying at a small dinner table and David standing at the edge of the room, pretending he wasn't emotional while being completely emotional. The months that followed were the best of Joon's life. He knew this not because things were easy. His condition didn't disappear. Stress still triggered episodes. There were mornings he picked up his notebook and felt the familiar cold fear, but because none of it was happening in the dark anymore. Amara knew. She had chosen to stay inside the knowledge, and that changed the weight of everything. But 3 weeks before the wedding, the stress came at a hostile acquisition attempt on his company's primary logistics division. Lawyers, counteroffers, emergency board sessions. He was sleeping 3 hours a night, flying between Seoul and Singapore, missing meals, ignoring every system they had built. He called Amara less. When they spoke, something was blurred behind his eyes. She could hear it in his voice. A particular kind of distance that wasn't emotional withdrawal. It was the condition. Stress had always been a trigger. She didn't panic. She sent voice notes every day. Short ones. "It's Amara. You love me. Come home soon." She mailed him printed photos to his hotel in Singapore. She got Miho to check in on him. She kept the system running even when he wasn't holding it. But the week before the wedding, he called her late. "Tell me something," he said. "Like what?" "Something real. Something that stays." She was quiet for a moment. "You came into my bakery and ordered the plainest thing on the menu, and I knew you were the most complicated person I'd ever meet." Her voice was steady. "You told me a secret that could have broken you, and instead it built us. You have never, not once, let the fear make you smaller. Not in front of me." A pause. "That stays, Joon. That one always stays." He didn't speak for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "Okay." The wedding morning arrived. He read the notebook. He reviewed the voice notes. He looked at the photo she had sent, the 2 of them at the bakery, flour on her apron, him laughing at something just off frame. He felt clear. He told David he felt clear. David said, "Good. Let's keep it that way." And for 3 hours it was. The church was full. White orchids. Soft piano. 300 guests. Amara walked in through those doors, and every person in that room understood, watching her, why a man would build a life around her. She moved with the kind of quiet certainty that made the air feel still. She reached the altar. She looked at Joon, and Joon looked back at her, and something behind his eyes was wrong. The pastor spoke. The vows, the moment, and the name did not come. The silence lasted 8 seconds. In a room of 300 people, 8 seconds is an eternity. Joon's expression wasn't unkind. That was the most devastating part. He wasn't cold or dismissive. He was lost. He was a man standing at an altar next to a woman he didn't recognize, trying very hard not to show how terrified he was. David took a half step. Miho stood up from his chair. "Who are you?" The words were barely above a whisper, but they reached every corner of that church. Someone in the back row gasped. A woman near the front pressed her hand to her mouth. The pianist stopped. Amara stood absolutely still. She looked at this man she loved, this complicated, brilliant, frightened man in his perfect suit, and she did not run, did not freeze, did not look to the guests for help. She breathed. She looked down at her bouquet, and then she reached inside it, tucked among the white orchids, placed there that morning, deliberately because she had known the stress of the week, had felt the distance in his voice, had prepared because that was what she did, were folded pieces of paper. Small, worn at the edges, some typed, some handwritten. She pulled one out, unfolded it, read it aloud, clearly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Joon came in today. Black coffee and a plain loaf. He returned another customer's order. When our eyes met, he looked at me like I was a problem he didn't know how to solve. I liked him immediately. A quiet laugh moved through the room. She pulled out another. Rainy Tuesday. He told me the truth. I didn't leave. I don't think I ever could. Her voice was steady. Her hands were steady. She was building him back from the outside in, piece by piece, right there in front of everyone. She pulled out another. He called me late. Said, "Tell me something real. Something that stays." I told him, "You have never, not once, let the fear make you smaller. Not in front of me." The room was completely still now. David had stopped trying to hold his expression together. Miho had sat back down and was bent forward, elbows on knees, face in his hands. One of Amara's aunts in the 7th row was weeping silently into a handkerchief. Amara kept going, note after note, memory after memory, each one a photograph and words, each one a thread she was handing him, patiently, without accusation, without grief, just love operating at full capacity. Joon stood at the altar and received each one. His face moved in ways it rarely moved. Something in the rigidity of him was loosening. Not breaking, loosening. The way ice sounds different right before it thaws. Then the last note. She unfolded it slowly. "Whatever comes, remember that you are loved. Remember that someone saw all of it. Remember that the strongest thing you ever built wasn't a company." She looked up at him. Her eyes were full, but not spilling. "The strongest thing you ever built," she said quietly, "was us." The silence held for a long moment. Then Joon's face changed. IT was small. Just a flicker at first. Something in the eyes, a particular softness, the way a door looks right before it opens. His chin dropped slightly. His breath changed. And then, Amara. One word, just her name. But the way he said it, like it had surfaced from somewhere deep and solid, like it had always been down there and had just needed the right current to bring it up, made 300 people exhale at once. She smiled. A real one. Not relief. Not triumph. Just the smile of a woman who had bet on someone and watched them find their way back. She took his hands. The pastor, who had been standing to the side, very still, clearly unsure what else to do, cleared his throat gently. "Shall we continue?" A ripple of soft laughter. And then, somehow, the ceremony went on. It wasn't a perfect wedding. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. Months later, the condition was still there. It didn't disappear because love arrived. It didn't work like that, and neither of them had ever pretended it would. There were still mornings with a notebook, still voice notes, still the careful architecture they had built together to hold the things that mattered. But he wasn't carrying it in the dark anymore, that he had her. Her steady eyes, her voice notes, her memory rituals, the spiced loaves that smelled like the beginning of something, the photographs in small envelopes, all of it still there, The structure intact, maintained by two people instead of one. A quiet afternoon in the bakery. Winter light through the glass. The kind of low gold that makes everything look like a photograph worth keeping. Joon walked in. She was behind the counter, wiping down the display case, humming something low. She looked up. He stood there for a moment, taking her in, the flower on her sleeve, the way her eyes changed when she saw him. And then a slow smile crossed his face. He pressed two fingers to his chin in exaggerated thought. "I'm sorry," he said. "What was your name again?" Her eyes narrowed. She reached into a tray of prep flour. The moment it left her hand, he was already laughing. The full, unguarded kind that didn't belong on the face of the Ice King of Seoul. The kind that only existed here, in this small warm bakery, with jazz playing low and winter light on the glass. He caught her wrist before the second handful. She was laughing too. They stood there like that, flour in his hair, her wrist in his hand, both of them laughing like people who had walked through something real and found each other on the other side of it. The strongest thing Park Joon ever built wasn't a company. It was a life worth remembering. If this story moved you, give it a like. If you've been here from the start, you already know what we do here. Subscribe and drop a comment below. What was the moment that hit you hardest? Was it the altar, the notes in the bouquet, or just the flower at the end? We'll see you in the next one.